Here are the 8 richest black families in Birmingham, and these fortunes run deeper than you'd expect. You're about to see a man who sold his software company for $1.2 billion, a Hall of Famer who'd sell off his MVP trophy just to build houses, and a man who started by collecting dimes and ended up bailing Dr. King out of jail. Let's get into this crazy countdown. Number 8. The Jackson Dynasty. Let's kick this whole thing off with a name you already know, because there's a real argument that Bo Jackson is the greatest pure athlete who has ever walked the earth. Born just outside Birmingham in Bessemer, Bo became a national sensation at Auburn, won the Heisman Trophy, and then went and did something so ridiculous that people still don't fully believe it. He became the only athlete in history to be named an All-Star in both Major League Baseball and the National Football League. 2 different professional sports, both at an all-star level, at the same time. The man was so good at everything that he basically broke people's brains. And here's where the real money came in. Bo's biggest financial catalyst wasn't even a contract, it was a marketing campaign. That legendary Bo Knows, run with Nike, didn't just sell sneakers, it completely rewired how modern sports marketing works, and it turned Bo into a household name in every corner of the country. Once his playing days wrapped up, he was smart about it too, quietly moving his money into commercial real estate, banking, food service, and premium spirits, which is how he built a diversified fortune worth somewhere between $25 and $35 million. These days, Bo lives in Hoover, the most affluent suburb in the whole Birmingham metro area, and the city loves him so much that there's literally a street back in Bessemer named Bo Jackson Avenue. He spends his time as a serious golfer out on the Robert Trent Jones Trail, showing up for charity events and staying close to the community that raised him. And unlike a lot of names on lists like this, his story is refreshingly free of scandal. He's been married to his wife Linda since 1987. They raised 3 kids on academic excellence and discipline, and he keeps that whole world private. There's even a running local joke about him, because folks in Birmingham swear that if you catch Bo at dinner, he'll happily spend the entire night teaching you the one correct way to run your finances and your life. In other words, Bo doesn't just know 2 sports, Bo knows everything. But as big as Bo's legend is, he's a modern chapter. Our next name is the reason a list like this can even exist, because he wrote the blueprint decades before anybody else. Number 7. The Gaston Legacy Dynasty. Number 7 is the Gaston legacy, and honestly, if you only remember one story from this entire video, make it this one. Back in 1923, a man named Arthur George Gaston noticed something heartbreaking happening around him. Poor black coal miners in Birmingham were dying, and their families were so broke that they had to pass a hat around the church just to scrape together enough money to bury them. Most people would see that and feel sad. Gaston saw it and built an empire. He started something called the Booker T. Washington Burial Society, and he began collecting tiny weekly premiums, we're talking 10 to 25 cents at a time, from working people all over the community. Now think about how slow that is. Dimes and quarters, week after week. But Gaston kept stacking it, and he used that capital to build a fully vertically integrated business, with his own funeral homes, his own casket manufacturing, and his own cemetery. And here's the genius of it. Because segregation legally locked black Alabamians out of white banks, hotels, and insurance companies, Gaston just went ahead and built his own versions of all of it. His own savings and loan association, his own business college, his own motel. He turned exclusion into an entire private economy. By the 1960s, Arthur Gaston was recognized as the wealthiest black man in all of America. And by the time he passed in 1996, his fortune had grown past $130 million. But the number is not even the most powerful part. His motel became the secure headquarters where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ralph Abernathy, and Fred Shuttlesworth sat down and planned the Birmingham campaign. And when Bull Connor threw Dr. King in jail in 1963, it was Gaston who quietly reached into his own pocket and put up $160,000 in cash to bail him out. The man lived by a simple line he loved to repeat, that of everything you earn, some of it is yours to keep. Today, his granddaughter Rochelle carries the torch and protects his place in history, while the Smith & Gaston Funeral Home still runs and the Gaston construction brand still wins major contracts around the city. The whole dynasty sits around 40 to 50 million now, but its real value can't be measured in dollars. Now, Gaston built his fortune in near silence, letting the work speak. Our next man made his millions doing the exact opposite, by talking into a microphone and making the whole country laugh, even while he was quietly carrying a heartbreak of his own. Speaking of a man who built an empire with nothing but a clear head and iron discipline, a lot of it comes down to how the brain performs when it matters. That's the idea behind an audio series called The Genius Switch. It's based on the neuroscience of the flow state, that mode where focus and creativity click at the same time. And the whole routine is just listening with headphones a few minutes a day. It's a one-time $39, less than a single online course, and it's backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you can test it on yourself with nothing to lose. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to the Magic City Countdown and its loudest success yet. Number 6. The Smiley Dynasty. Number 6 is the Smiley family, and this one you'll recognize the second you hear his voice. Ricky Smiley was born right here in Birmingham in 1968, came up through Woodlawn High, spent some time at Alabama State, and then went out and built a 30-year entertainment empire out of nothing but timing, charm, and a gift for making people laugh. His crown jewel is the Ricky Smiley Morning Show, a nationally syndicated radio program that reaches millions of listeners across the country every single morning. And around that, he stacked a TV sitcom, regular television spots, and massive sold-out comedy tours. And the man is still climbing, not coasting. In 2025, there was an actual corporate bidding war over his stand-up special called Foolish, and Hulu came out on top with the streaming rights. Best part, he filmed the whole thing at the historic Lyric Theater right in Birmingham, turning his biggest career moment into a hometown celebration. All of it adds up to a net worth somewhere between $15 and $20 million and a comfortable life split between Atlanta and Birmingham, including a sprawling Magic City mansion. But here's a detail that tells you who Ricky Smiley really is. That mansion wasn't just for him. He opened it up to his cousin Summer and her 4 children, so he could give those kids a stable, structured home, complete with strict rules about school reporting and apparently some very serious opinions about how you're allowed to behave in his kitchen. This is a man who sees family as the whole point, which makes what he went through so hard to talk about. In January of 2023, Ricky suffered every parent's absolute worst nightmare when his oldest son, Brandon, died of an accidental overdose at just 32 years old after a long and painful battle with addiction, and only a month after Brandon had been baptized. Instead of hiding from that pain, Ricky did something remarkably brave. He wrote a deeply personal book about grief and faith to help other families walking the same dark road, and he's leaned on his family, especially his young granddaughter, Storm, to keep moving forward. It turned him from just a comedian into something more, a voice a lot of hurting people genuinely lean on. Now Ricky made his fortune using the media, standing in front of the microphone. Our next man built the media itself, from the ground up, and he's been doing it for an entire century. Number 5. The Lewis Dynasty. Number 5 is the Lewis Dynasty, and to understand this one, you have to wrap your head around a man who turned 100 years old in January of 2025 and is still a towering figure in Birmingham. Dr. Jesse J. Lewis Sr. earned 5 separate college degrees over his lifetime, including a doctorate, served as the president of Lawson State Community College, and somehow still found the time to build a business legacy that reshaped an entire industry. Back in 1954, Lewis founded one of the very first Black-owned public relations and advertising firms in the United States. And he didn't just open the doors, he walked straight into corporate boardrooms and forced major brands to wake up to something they'd been ignoring, which was the enormous spending power of Black consumers. He basically pioneered multicultural marketing before that was even a phrase people used. Then, in 1963, at the absolute peak of the civil rights struggle, he launched the Birmingham Times so the city's Black community would finally have a newspaper that actually spoke for them. Over his career, this man owned or held a piece of at least 17 different businesses, from grocery stores and nightclubs to a recording studio, radio stations, and even a golf course. Now here's the twist that makes people do a double take. In 1975, Dr. Lewis became the first Black cabinet member for Governor George Wallace. Yes, that George Wallace. The man who built his whole political brand on hardline segregation. A lot of people questioned it, and fairly so. But Lewis defended the move as pure strategy, the idea being that you get inside the room where the resources are handed out, and then you pull as much as you can back toward your own community. And for all that wealth, the man has lived in the same modest Smithfield home for nearly 50 years, worth somewhere in the $20 to $25 million range but never needing to prove it. He's also a lifelong golf fanatic, so beloved for wearing his vintage knickerbockers on the course that the local housing authority literally modeled an award trophy after his likeness. And he's used that passion to raise millions for housing scholarships. In 2016, he handed the agency down to his own great-granddaughter, who modernized it into a digital global firm called Agency 54. That is what a real dynasty looks like. Now Dr. Lewis spent 100 patient years building slow and steady. Our next man made tens of millions in a hurry with a basketball, though the road that got him eligible to play came with one very strange asterisk. Number 4. The Bledsoe Dynasty. Number 4 is the Bledsoe Dynasty. Eric Bledsoe was born in Birmingham in 1989 and came up through Parker High School, where he put up a stat line so absurd it almost doesn't look real. We're talking 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists a game, dragging his team all the way to a state championship final. From there, he went to the University of Kentucky, sharing a backcourt with future NBA stars John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, and then got drafted 18th overall in 2010. And that's when the money got serious. Bledsoe carved out a 12-year NBA career built on elite, physical defense, earning 2 all-defensive team selections along the way. His peak came with the Phoenix Suns and then the Milwaukee Bucks, and in 2019, he cashed in with a 4-year, $70 million extension on a top-seeded Bucks team. By the time his NBA run was over, his contract earnings had blown past $108 million, and he wasn't even done, because he then took his talents overseas to the Shanghai Sharks and captured a championship in the Chinese Basketball Association in 2025. Today, his fortune sits somewhere between 65 and 75 million. But here's the wild footnote in his story, and it's a real head-scratcher. When Bledsoe was making the jump from Parker High to college, his eligibility got dragged into a full-blown investigation because his algebra grade had somehow been changed from a C to an A, which conveniently lifted his GPA just enough to clear the NCAA's academic bar. An independent law firm dug into it and flat out said the school's explanation was not credible. And yet, after all that, the school board voted to let the grade stand, and the NCAA cleared him to play anyway. Sometimes the strangest part of a come-up story is the paperwork. For all his global travel, Bledsoe keeps his heart in Birmingham through his foundation, which pours real resources into youth programs and education in the city's inner-city neighborhoods. He even hosts a yearly charity basketball game that pulls NBA stars like Devin Booker and John Wall right into the Magic City. Now Bledsoe made his fortune on the hardwood. Our next Birmingham kid did the same trick on the football field, except he anchored a national championship and got paid $100 million to do it. Number 3. The Darius Dynasty. Number 3 is the Darius Dynasty. Marcel Darius grew up in Birmingham under some genuinely tough circumstances, came up through Huffman High, and then walked onto the University of Alabama's roster under Nick Saban, which is about as high pressure as college football gets. And he delivered in the biggest way imaginable. Darius was a defensive anchor on Alabama's national championship team. And in that title run, he famously scooped up a defensive touchdown against Texas and walked away with MVP honors on the sport's biggest stage. That kind of dominance doesn't stay hidden for long. In 2011, the Buffalo Bills drafted him 3rd overall, and just a few years later in 2015, they handed him a historic 6-year contract worth $100 million, with a jaw-dropping $60 million of that fully guaranteed. For a moment there, Marcel Darius was one of the highest-paid defensive players in the entire history of the NFL. A kid from Huffman, getting paid 9 figures to make quarterbacks miserable every Sunday. After his run in Buffalo, he finished out his career with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and by the end, his contract earnings had cleared $90 million, leaving him with a net worth today between $55 and $65 million. Now his career had its turbulent stretches, including a couple of league suspensions that cost him real money, the kind of bumps that remind you how thin the line is between the top and the bottom in pro sports. But back home, Darius is treated like a genuine hero, to the point where the Birmingham City Council formally recognized him. And he earns that love. Every single year he runs a completely free youth football and cheerleading camp at Huffman High, handing hundreds of Birmingham kids real training, gear, and mentorship they'd never otherwise get. And when the community has hit hard times, he's shown up in a big way, teaming up with local food banks to run massive giveaways that fed thousands of struggling families across the city. The man clearly never forgot which streets raised him. Now Darius was a monster on defense, but he was never exactly a household face. Our next man might be one of the most recognizable people on the entire planet, and he's sitting on a plan for his championship trophies that you will not see coming. Number 2. The Barkley Dynasty. Number 2 is the Barkley Dynasty, and come on, you knew Charles Barkley had to be near the top. He came out of Leeds High School just outside Birmingham, starred at Auburn, and then bulldozed his way into the Basketball Hall of Fame during one of the most entertaining playing careers the NBA has ever seen. But here's the thing about Chuck. He might actually be more famous now than he was as a player, because his decades-long run on TNT's Inside the NBA turned him into the funniest, most quotable, most unfiltered voice in all of sports television. The man says whatever he's thinking, and America loves him for it. That media dominance is the real engine of his fortune, which sits comfortably north of $80 to $100 million, but he's been sharp about building beyond the broadcast booth too. In 2019, Barkley became the majority owner of Redmont Distilling Company. And here's a fun piece of trivia. It was the first legal distillery to operate inside Birmingham city limits since the days of Prohibition. Under his ownership, that little boutique operation scaled into a nationally distributed brand of premium vodka and gin. Charles Barkley doesn't do anything halfway. Now the man has never hidden his flaws, and he's been famously candid over the years about his love of high-stakes gambling, which is just part of the unfiltered honesty people adore about him. But here is the fact that genuinely raises the hair on your arms. Barkley has said he plans to sell off his most priceless personal treasures, and we're talking his 1993 MVP trophy, his 2 Olympic gold medals, and an autographed flag from the original 1992 Dream Team. And why would he part with items like that? To directly fund the construction of affordable green housing back in his hometown of Leeds. In his own words, those physical trophies just aren't a big deal compared to helping the community that made him. He's also dropped $1 million on Miles College, the single largest gift in that HBCU's 122-year history, on top of steady giving to children's healthcare in Alabama. So yeah, Barkley is loud, rich, and beloved. But here's the twist that surprises almost everyone. He is not the wealthiest name on this list, not even close. Our number 1 is a man most people outside Birmingham have never even heard of. Number 1. The Otulana Dynasty. Number 1 is the Otulana Dynasty, and this is where the numbers stop looking anything like the rest of the list. Shigun Otulana and his wife Mary Fawad are sitting on a fortune estimated between $450 and $550 million, which puts them so far ahead of everyone else here that it's almost unfair. And the craziest part is that they did it quietly, without the fame, the cameras, or the highlight reels. So how does a name most people have never heard become the richest family in the Magic City? It started back in 2013, when Otulana built a piece of software called Theranest, which handled the boring but absolutely essential work of billing, scheduling, and clinical notes for behavioral health providers. Not flashy, but incredibly needed. He rolled it into a parent company called Therapy Brands, and grew it until it was serving more than 28,000 practices across the country. Then came the moment that changed everything. In May of 2021, Otulana sold Therapy Brands to the global private equity giant KKR for a staggering $1.2 billion, pulling off one of the biggest corporate exits in the entire history of Alabama. And here's the part that makes business people fall out of their chairs. He built that whole billion-dollar machine on a shoestring, starting with only about $250,000 in funding while running profit margins that most Silicon Valley founders can only dream about. He was lean, disciplined, and efficient from day one. In fact, there's a delicious little footnote to all this. A few years after the sale, the ratings agencies actually downgraded Therapy Brands under its new Wall Street owners as they piled on debt and burned through cash. Which quietly tells you everything. Otolana built it clean, sold it at the very top, and let somebody else sweat the aftermath. But what he's done since is even more impressive than the exit. Instead of riding off into the sunset, he launched a venture studio called Harmony Venture Labs with a mission to fund and launch 40 new startups right there in Birmingham, deliberately turning his hometown into a real technology hub. And his wife, Mary, a trained forensic accountant, runs a company that buys up abandoned, run-down houses in struggling neighborhoods, fully renovates them, and rents them back to families on a path to actually owning them. So while everybody else on this list got rich and got out, the Otolanas are quietly using their billion-dollar exit to rebuild the Magic City one company and one city block at a time. That might be the smartest kind of rich there is. And those were the 8 richest black families in Birmingham, the Magic City. Did you catch the thread running through all of it? From a man collecting dimes for a burial society 100 years ago to a founder selling software for over $1 billion today, the pattern never really changed. Build something real, then turn around and lift up the people and the city that made you. So now I'm curious, which story stuck with you the most? Was it Bo Jackson somehow starring in 2 pro sports at once, Gaston bailing Dr. King out of jail with his own cash, or the quiet billionaire fixing up abandoned houses? Drop your pick in the comments, hit that like button if any of these caught you off guard, and subscribe because we break down wealth like this every single week.